How do we create a more just and equitable Canada? What does that look like?
It's a big question. My name is Jagmeet Singh, and I'm leader of Canada's New Democratic Party. I often, with my wife particularly, joke about like 10-year-old Jagmeet and how like this is a trip and this is not anything that 10-year-old Jagmeet would have imagined, because I was bullied for the way I looked, and now I'm leading a national party. But I don't forget where I came from. I don't forget that I used to be a 10-year-old kid that would never think that someone that looked like me would ever run to become Prime Minister of Canada. So that little kid is blown away, does not believe what's happened. There's a practice called seva that my mom taught me about, and the idea is selfless service. The word for leader in Punjabi is sevadar, or one who serves. And so for me, I always thought of service as a big part of life, and that leadership was one who served. I kind of never really liked cutting my hair. I kind of liked my hair long. And my mom's like, okay, well, if you keep it, do you want to like tie it up in the traditional way? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I didn't really understand the import of that decision. Like I didn't understand what that would mean. And all of a sudden getting bullied immediately because I looked so different. So kids would pick on me, kids would walk up to me and kind of just push me. And then they started also making fun of the color of my skin. And I could have went two ways. I could have been bullied and said, okay, this is definitely not worth it. But I have a bit of a stubborn streak. Like if I do something that I believe in, then I don't want to back down. And so instead of backing down, I kind of went in deeper and I said, okay, well, what is this all about? And as my mom taught me more about the ideas of oneness, of equality, of justice, seemed like the right thing to do. So it really spoke to me as a kid. So I was born in Toronto, but I grew up in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Lots of really fond memories. We were unperturbed by the fact that it was constantly cold and snowing. We're always outside and playing. I learned how to swim. I learned how to ride my bike. My first memories are St. John's and then, of course, Windsor. Yeah, my dad definitely taught me about being ambitious. He went to a village school where there was no tables or chairs. He learned on the dirt floor and had a dream of becoming a doctor and coming to a new country. And so he did that, and he always had that drive to excel and to learn more. I could see my dad really being studious and reading a lot. There was always books around the house, and my mom really encouraged me to read. So I loved reading. I found it an escape sometimes when I was worried or stressed out about life. Throughout my childhood, as long as I can remember, my dad was always struggling with addiction. So as young as grade 3, there would be times when my dad would be angry or he would be yelling. And so there's lots of scary times. I was tight with my brother. We grew up close-knit. When things would go on and we were afraid, we would kind of huddle together and console each other. So we were all pretty close. So I was always growing up around like that fear of what someone who's dealing with an addiction might do. And so when I left, there was none of that. There was no screaming at night, and there was no loud bangs at night. So it was this sense of peace that I had. I quickly developed a voice that I think for a long time had been trying to emerge, but kind of just burst through when I went to university. By the third year, me and my brother would be alone, and things were getting worse and worse with my dad's health and the addiction. So we kind of had this family meeting, and I thought, okay, I think he's got to move in with me. And so when he moved in, I think he was a bit surprised at how well I was able to manage and get him into the class and get him into school and do the things that normally your parents would do for you. He just immediately flourished. It was an incredible for both of us. Like I finally didn't feel the guilt anymore because I knew that my brother was safe. And those 3 years that we lived together in London were some of our fondest memories. We still talk about them to this day. We had really good times. My number one focus was I might be able to find a career where I could support my family. That was my number one focus. But then it turned out when I got into law school, I started seeing that there was a clear link. The more I understand the legal system, the more I could use my skills to support people that are otherwise ignored or forgotten or left behind. So I started doing Know Your Rights seminars in universities, and they were really fun to do. People were really excited to learn more about their rights. Everyone deserves fairness, everyone deserves good representation, and that translates to not just in law, but in life. People deserve respect and dignity, and I fight for that every day. Because of some of the experience that I've gone through, some of the things that I've seen, it gives me a better understanding of the struggles that everyday folks go through. I look at the opportunity that I have as one where I can kind of fall in the footsteps of people that have stood up for principles and stood up for people and made changes that have actually helped improve the lives of everyday folks. 2011, I ran for Member of Parliament, and it was an incredible experience. It was really a campaign filled with a lot of joy, a lot of excitement. And what really struck me was we were able to build this huge team of volunteers, many of whom could not even vote. And they were able to share with people from around the riding why this campaign mattered to them. Well, maybe we can inspire a lot of people who didn't see themselves as leaders to imagine themselves as leaders.
35,000.
We made history. It was really special to be the first ever racialized leader of a federal party in Canada. So that was a really beautiful thing to be a part of. And taking all that in, there wasn't much time because we just hit the road, and the next day in Ottawa doing interviews and started working right away as the leader of the party. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, but is also really hopeful because I hope that people from all backgrounds, young women, young boys, can all imagine themselves living their best lives, fulfilling their fullest potential, and believing that they belong and they deserve happiness in their life. I can get why a lot of people feel cynical, because a lot of politicians have been very cynical. They've said one thing and done another. They've gotten people really hopeful and then broken those hopes by breaking promises. But if we're cynical, then everything stays the way it is. Things don't get better. And it is difficult to remain hopeful in the face of cynicism. But I remember something that my mom taught me, and she would always say to me, I asked her how she was doing. She'd always say, I'm in Chardi Kala. And that translates to rising spirits. But not just any sort of rising spirits or courageous optimism in the face of hopeless odds. And so I know sometimes it feels like things are hopeless, but the only way we make things better is if we continue to dig deep and find the courage to remain optimistic about the hope of making things better. And that's what I believe in. I believe we can turn things around, build a better country. We can build better for everyone. And I ask you all to keep that courageous optimism and that sense of Chardi Kala alive.